So just what are those gosh darn Variant and Criterion dungeons? Don't worry, we're here to tell you here on the Carbuncle Chronicle. Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the Carbuncle Chronicle, your podcast for everything awesome in Final Fantasy XIV. I am Basil, and I play a character named 4K Rydiske, who's usually a summoner on Leviathan.
I'm Anna. I play a Lala named Cormier Rydiske, who's usually a dancer on Leviathan.
And I'm Tobias. I play Nanawai Silvestri, a Lalafell content creator that loves Endwalker.
On Leviathan.
Exactly, on Level. Well, mostly.
I should have said most of the week I'm on Aether, because that's the only way I can do any of the high-end content.
Well, that's a different issue that unfortunately has a solution, which is everyone moves to Aether when they want to do hardcore content.
Or a regional party finder.
Right. Like, well, I mean, that's probably going to be the eventual solution, but until they can create that solution, everyone's just going to go to the physical, set of data centers, that people expect to do the high-end content, which apparently is Aether. That's just, it used to be, Tobias, in the before times, before you could actually take your character and take them wherever you wanted to go, at least within, the continental set of data centers for your areas, whether it's, Europe or Oceania or, Japan or the Americas, you would get people doing, people would create, stuff, in each, data center as far as raid groups and things. And you would go to Party Finder if you want to plug it, and it would be contained to where your data center is. Well, now that you can just travel to whatever data center you want, I think this really, really happened with the inclusion of Dynamis, where there was just not a lot of people doing stuff in Dynamis because it's such a new data center that the solution was clearly, we should just go to a different data center because the party finders will be full there. And we're like, well, where do people really do the hardcore raiding? Well, the reputation is Aethers. So they all went to Aether. And so everyone else, I think, went to Aether. And now it's all Aether. Even the online internet, Final Fantasy XIV convention, it's all just Aether now.
I think it's funny that we pretty much reverse engineered commuting to work in the game.
Yeah.
Like, you live in a suburb,
Yeah.
You live on Primal, but you commute to Aether to actually do work. It's kind of funny in a way. Like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing because, you choose your data center and your world shard based on where you want your home to be and your FC. But I feel like that doesn't really matter as much as where you want to actually pick up and play, and you have pretty much people taking the interstates to the next city over where they do everything.
And honestly, it's not the biggest downside to that is I don't get FC buffs when I'm over there. Because I would put up food buffs or durability buffs or whatever would be helpful for raiding. But then when I go to Aether, I don't get them anymore. It's not that big of a difference, but it's still nice to have.
Yeah, and for me, it's really a case of the reason why we're on Leviathan is because when I started playing Final Fantasy XIV, 8, 9, how many years ago it was at this point, I didn't know where to go, and so I was on Facebook at the time, like, hey, does any play Final Fantasy XIV? Because I need a server to pick. And an old coworker of mine went, hey, I'm on this server. You should come to this one. And no one else said anything else. So I went, okay, I know at least one person over there. That's good enough for me because no one else spoke up. And so that's why we're all on Leviathan. Thanks to her. And she then had a wife, but they moved up to Canada and I don't see them anymore. And in fact, they don't play on Leviathan anymore. So it feels a little weird as far as that goes. But by golly, we've made it our home and we like it there.
We have houses. We're never moving.
It's kind of funny because we think of it now. You think of things like Ether as the high-end content. You think of Dynamis as the new place, for the empty place where you can get homes, new homes. We have all these sort of ideas of what these places are and like to avoid Balmung and stuff like that. But back when you guys were started off, like that community didn't really exist yet. So I kind of wonder, for people who've been involved for so long, how do you feel about like the cultures that have cropped up with these data centers?
I mean, I really didn't used to care until I couldn't raid on where I was.
Yeah, because back in the day, Anna could raid on Leviathan because the people had no choice. They wanted to raid. And on Primal, they had to raid on Primal. You had, if you wanted to raid on Aether, you would have to make a character on Aether, in an Aether server. I still like the various, eccentric necessities, bits, unique bits and bobs that, servers will sort of create for themselves. Like, for example, even back then, Balmung was known as the RP server. I just didn't know that when I was signing up for characters. I like the concept of RP, so I probably would have made my character on Balmung had I known, but I really have enjoyed my time on Leviathan, my time in Primal. Like, for example, it is a Primal thing, not anywhere else, for the whole concept of taking the Bone Dragon up north in Crystal Tower in Labyrinth of the Ancients. Like, that's a Primal specific thing that people in Primal do. I think it's a good idea. I get why we do it, but it is very uniquely a Primal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's neat.
For sure. I just think that now that we've got the ability to travel between data centers, I wonder if some of that culture is going to be lost. I wonder if you're going to have newbies that just jump on Dynamis because it's empty, but they end up learning the commute. They're out. I wonder if maybe we'd be best served as a community to just have the game flat out tell you, this is where you go. Either is where you're going to go for a high-end hardcore content. Crystal, I think it is. Crystal's where Balmung is. Crystal's where you go for the role playing. I know that with my brief time in WoW, they did label servers flat out as like RP servers. So I wonder if at this point maybe 14 would be best served by doing that as well.
I think because it's something that these reputations have accumulated through the fandom, I think the Square Enix team, they don't want to like flat out say things. They don't want to, blessedly anoint the Crystal data center as the RP data center, right. Because there, like, for example, there still is a role-playing community on Leviathan, for example. Like, things do happen in other servers. It's not just one does one. I mean, it's different. You still get a little bit of everything. And I think really the trick is going to always be, no matter how you label these various data centers and servers, you're going to probably want to play where your friends are. Yeah, maybe if someone is just logging into 14 site unseen, knowing nothing, that might be useful. But I think a lot of folks at this point, if they're going to play, besides just a general hype, it's probably because they know somebody else who's playing. Maybe it might be a case of, we keep saying, hey, we play on Leviathan, and maybe someone who goes to one of our Final Fantasy 14 fan panels, they go, well, they mentioned Leviathan, maybe I should try that. Or Axe the Blood God for them. A lot of them play on Ultros because Nadia and Vic and other folks were already playing on Ultros. While there's not an Axe the Blood God, free company or anything, because they know that's where people are. They know that there are people there.
Yeah, and like we were speaking with a friend this past weekend, they are on Cactar, and they were talking about how much of an influx of people they had when certain streamers started playing the game and joined that server. So it's just a varied reasons as to why you pick your server.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting just how that comes down. It really is. It's almost like a sociological experiment to see how these things break down. And I find that interesting to see how it evolves because of this interstate that the data center travel has created, how it's changed things almost naturally.
And for another example of things she's also changing is that I know another friend of ours, she's actually changing data center. She's moving over to Crystal. She wants to be more involved and be heavier involved in roleplay stuff. So she actually sacrificed her house, which is a crazy talk. I'm really surprised that she did that. But she wants to be able to just log on and she doesn't want to commute to roleplay. That's where she wants to live. And so she's making that, she's uprooting herself and moving on over there. So all the best of luck to her. And hopefully she can land another house one day on Crystal. But
They also just got married.
That's true. Congratulations, Star. Hopefully everything starts coming up roses.
Coming up crystals, you mean?
That's yeah. Crystal roses. Yeah, there we go.
Just flowers.
So it is funny how Anna mentions, certain streamers, because a lot of the impetus for us to do this particular episode, it is about Variant Criterion Dungeons, because I think it's a neat, novel, new concept that they introduce in Endwalker. And right now, tonight, as we're recording, it is maintenance before tomorrow, where it'll be 6.5, and we're getting a whole new bevy of stuff to do. Which also means that we are on the very tail end of a current Final Fantasy XIV expansion cycle. And what that means is that all the, quote, content creators, whether they be streamers or other podcasters, pretty much anyone who is trying to make 14 not just their lifestyle choice, but also their livelihood choice, have all gotten bored playing nonstop 14 for views and subs and what have you, and now they're tired and cranky, and you only hear about how this is a dead game.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to do that, like you said, for a living, you have to keep pushing content out, and that type of content isn't always the most accurate. It's just the most sensational, the one, the stuff that gets the clicks. And right now, sort of the overarching psychic idea is that the game's kind of boring now. So of course you have the loud people in the community are going to echo that to get people to click and hear why and agree with them for reasons. So,
and for me, it's funny because this happens like clockwork. Like every 2 years, you could probably set a timer to it.
Oh yeah.
Honestly. But what I find really funny is that in previous expansions, the complaints would be, I hate this relic grind. Why do we have to do this relic grind? I hate Eureka. Why do we have to do Eureka? Why do we have to go do all this Eureka stuff? I hate Baja. Why does Baja have to be tied to the relic? Why does the relic take so long? Why is it's so monotonous? Why do we have to, and this time it's, why is the relic so easy?
Why don't we have Eureka?
Yeah, why don't we have Eureka? Why don't we have Baja? And I'm like, oh my god. Come on, y'all. I'm sorry. Oh my gods. Oh my the 12. Oh my Thal's balls. Come on, y'all. It's alright. It's fine. I will say Do I miss having a Rika / Baja? I do, kinda. I really enjoy those. I really, really liked Baja.
I still need a field note from Baja. I don't want to do it. But I will one day, because guess what? That's still content that I need to finish.
Speaking of content I need to finish, man, I got the whole game in front of me.
That's true. There's for example, Anna and I, we 14 has been our lifestyle choices. I sort of, so Jeff Kanata on the DLC podcast loves the phrase, you have games that you play and games that you're married to. And there are a lot of games that want to marry you at this point and not just be a game that you play. MMOs have always been a game that you marry. Now, ignore the fact that Yoshida's like, look, y'all, it's okay to see other people. It's fine. Like, we're never going to leave you, so you're welcome to leave whatever you want, and you just come on back when you're ready for us some more. But that said, they're always trying to do new things or, update other things. I remember when we got Eureka, we also got a deep dungeon. And then with Shadowbringers, we did not get a deep dungeon, but we got Baja. We got another exploratory zone. And they said we can't do both at the same time. So with Endwalker, we got the deep dungeon, but not an exploratory zone. But those were both new ideas that they were trying to do to add more things that just weren't more dungeons or 8-person, trials or raids or another 24-person raid. Like, they were trying different types of content, different challenging ideas that could be more hardcore, they could be more casual. They're always trying to implement new ideas. They're always trying to push something, because if they do the exact same thing over and over again all the time, people are going to truly get bored.
Well, I'm thinking that, isn't like the general theme for 14 since 2.0 the fact that they want to try new things? Because I seem to recall a time when they didn't want to try anything new. And oh, wait, that was 1.0 when they just wanted to copy the success of Final Fantasy 11. That really didn't work out, did it? That was kind of a boring mess. There are a lot of things wrong with 1.0. And let's see, when they brought in people that played other games, like World of Warcraft, for instance, games that were not just Final Fantasy 11, it turns out that ARR was pretty good. And if you play the game, like me, if you played in a very short period of time, and you can see the evolution of things like mechanics over time and see how things evolved, you can see pretty apparently that the way the game has changed from 2.0 to 6.4, there have been huge quality of life jumps, some of which come from obvious things and some of which comes from playing other games and taking mechanics from other games that are not always even MMOs. I mean, hell, when I describe the way this game plays to people, I say that, you have the visual novel stuff, and then when you get into combat, you're pretty much playing Rock Band and DDR at the same time. That's how 14 Mechanics plays. Like, it's almost like a rhythm game. And if you would have told me that MMOs were a rhythm game, I would have played this game way back in 2013.
Heck yeah.
But no one told me that. It wasn't only until I discovered Mid-Stormblood, where I'm banging out my rotation, and I'm like, wait, this is just like playing Guitar Hero. Like, there's a beat, and I'm playing notes to the beat, and oh wait, I'm dancing around on the stage. Like, this is so drastically different than it was even from FF11, and this is a game that's built on change, and some of the change isn't going to hit. They have filtered stuff out. There have been, PvP modes and stuff that they've taken out over time, and whether or not that's a good thing, whether or not they should bring it back, you're not always going to have good stuff all the time. If we just repeated another Baja 2.0, and then in Dawn Shell we had Baja 3.0, people would get tired of these exploratory zones pretty quick. So I'm glad that we have variant stuff because it's so different.
Yeah, I mean, look at Diadem. It took 3 iterations for it to become something usable. And while it's
Sure.
not, while it may not be the most hopping content, we know people that go in there and gather for hours to make money, to level, to get the achievements. Like people, if people are interested in it, like the content will get people can always find content. I've been playing for 9 years. There's still so much content that I need to do. And I play this game all the time. Now, granted, I'm one of the weird people. When I get bored, I make another character. I don't go play other games all the time. Like, and I do sometimes, but this has been the only MMO I've ever played. And so I think it's probably akin to the people that started in WoW Classic and all that and played throughout the years. Like they played, so many different characters for different jobs and did so many different things in that game. Like that's what it is for me. And so there's still, like I said, there's still so much content that I haven't done. What is it? Someone yesterday, it came out that they had gotten all almost 2,500, almost 2,800 achievements in this game. I kid you not, I have looked at my achievement list and went, I should just start from the top and go down and see how many I can finish.
When I saw that, I did for a second thought that was you. I was like, wait, did Anna do this? Did she not tell me she did this?
No, I haven't done that. But yeah, but that's other like I don't ever want to do another Zeta weapon. I did one Zeta weapon for the kettles. I don't ever want to do them again. Will I? Maybe. If I get that kind of itch to go get all those achievements. And that's the thing, like if you want to do something in the game, there's something to do. You just got to find it.
And it's just like this year in particular, like for a game that is built on inspiration from so many other games, we are in a year, 2023, where there are so many important big games that are out right now. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm lazy. Maybe I work too much or too little, and I don't. I'm behind on all the games this year. How are you guys out there in internet world like caught up on 14 and also caught up on Zelda and caught up on 16 and caught up on like all these other games that have come out? How? Please.
It's their job.
Share me your things. I just wish the people who listen to these, like, sure, you're gonna have people that do that, and like I said, they thrive on controversy, but like the people that listen to them, like, come on, look around, like, usually exercise some critical thought.
And I will say that and I want to say that there are no complaints, or all these complaints are invalid, in that I do get some ideas. Like, for example, where we talk about the variant Criterion dungeons, and people have, some complaints that they're actually, it sounds like they're trying to figure out on better ways to tie rewards from the harder Criterion Savage stuff to actual upgrades that you can actually use as far as your eye level stuff goes. That makes sense. That seems incredibly valid and will give people a reason to do the harder versions of the variant Criterion, besides it being a really neat idea. There are folks that do not enjoy the spreadsheet aspect of Island Sanctuary, where either A, you have to figure out what's the maximum best way to do your exports to get the max amount of the currencies to spend in the island, or that people have already figured it out through using spreadsheets and bots or whatever. And so now it's just, you can just follow these instructions. I played it as, I think, somewhat intended as my Animal Crossing analog, in that I have a set thing of exports and I just work what I need to do for those exports, and I get the amount of currencies that I get, and otherwise I kick back and catch in the sites and being like, yep, this is my island, that's cool, I'll check in with y'all a couple of weeks. But and there's another thing where I know people, I will say, I do feel that there are two overall camps as far as the storyline as it is currently, from Endwalker to the beginning of Dawn Trail. They did do something different in that Endwalker was an actual legit endpoint Normally, what they'll do is that at the end of an expansion, while the expansion will certainly have a finale, we will get the falling action, the as they trail off, haha, not trail, of the story, and then they'll start ramping up to the next expansion. Whereas this time, because they spent so long giving it like an actual, like putting a period on the Highland Zodiac arc, and Dawn Trail will start a new arc of some sort. What we're getting now is a different story. It's an important story. It's a story that probably does need to be told. It possibly could have been told as a quote unquote side story, but honestly, that's getting to a different discussion where I feel all the optional content storyline wise, none of it's actually optional. And that's a different tangent. The tangent I'm going on is that you have people who like Final Fantasy IV, they're sickos for Final Fantasy IV, and so we're eating really, really good right now. Holy crap, are we eating good? Or you don't give a flying flip about Final Fantasy IV, and a lot of this is not ringing as well to you, which I don't get, because even though you might not be into 4, I don't know how anyone is it down with 0 and having the 0 adventures.
But then you have the weird third camp where I'm in, where I didn't really like 4, but I've also really been enjoying the content and the bosses and stuff. I really feel like the references here have been very enjoyable.
And I never played 4.
Yeah, but at least you watched all my streams that you can find the VODs for on YouTube at its basal time when I played through the Pixel remaster of 4. Right,
Yeah, sure.
everybody? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But no, I agree that it's kind of a weird spot. They're doing something different this time. There's not like it used to be point 3 was the finale to the previous thing. And then point 4, we were already on the on-ramp onto the next thing. And it was a very steep on-ramp, whether it be stuff with Ilberd or people getting isekai'd or whatnot. Like, we don't have quite that step yet. Of course, we don't know what the last patch is going to be. I'm kind of hoping that we see something that's going to be revealed in the Euro Fan Fest trailer, but we'll have to see.
And like I said, this possibly could have been, for example, we've had stuff like the Warring Triad set of raids, or experts, or not experts, goodness gracious, extremes. Trials, extremes. Like we had a set of those, or the weapon series that we had in Shadowbringers, or the Four Lords that we got in Stormblood, which told their own side story. But I think all those stories are important to have, and do in fact have ramifications and things that you kind of want to know going into other content. You're best served to have done that content. And shoot, there's stuff, like for example, there is stuff that happened in the Evilise raids, and that stuff that actually have really important ramifications for learning new things that we learned in the current set of Pandemonium raid story and that storyline. Like there is stuff in one that absolutely connects to the other, and everything. Like 14 is an incredibly dense lore and tapestry of storylines that are all interwoven and intersect with one another in ways, and with lore drops where in places you would not even expect. Looking at you, Hildebrand stuff for this Endwalker, like there are things that are just interconnected, and I feel that all of these stories are important. And you need to be playing all of these to get a really good comprehensive understanding of what's going on. Like another example, the Four Lords and stuff that you've learned happening also through Stormblood. One of the big things in the Mount Roncon stuff is the concept of objects can not only carry energies with them and become artifacts and enchanted and whatnot, but they can also become cursed, and and have a life of their own, but not in a good way. And that is something that you learned in Stormblood, but especially with the Four Lords trial series. And it's once again perkling up here in our variant dungeons and Criterion dungeons in the lore for that. And you could do the Mount Roncon stuff, and they do explain things. But if you really wanted a good, real comprehensive understanding of what's going on, you're like, oh wait, I remember this. They mentioned this in this plot line back here. So it's good. It's good to eat your vegetables, I guess is what I'm saying.
I mean, a lot of the FF4 stuff reminds me a lot of the Omega raids that were themselves just a whole bunch of fun references thrown in. But imagine playing everything past Stormblood without knowing about Omega. Like you can't do it.
Why is this chicken walking around with a robot?
Exactly. It's so crucial to understanding the twinning and the Omicron base and the stuff after. How many remixes have we got of Escape now or Escape, whatever? Like there's like 4 different versions in the game itself. Like I can't. They really need to make Omega mandatory. I'm gonna say it. They need to make each series mandatory.
Imagine going through Shadowbringers and having not done Alexander.
Exactly. Imagine playing this game and not doing Eden. Come on. I can say that about like every optional content. It's like it's optional, but it's not really optional.
And they've even said that there will be stuff that you will see happen that you will only see happen if you've in the upcoming patch storyline stuff for Growing Light. There will at least be some things that'll happen, but only if you have played through Eden.
Oh, really? Oh, that makes sense because we're going
to where we're going.
Okay. That's right. I don't want to go into it, but I can't wait because I'm glad we're going to there, and I'm glad that certain people will have a certain sort of firearms. Certain things will have a certain type of weaponry. So we'll say.
So that really brings us to the actual topic of all. Again, they're trying all these different things, and all these storylines intersect.
Yeah, I guess I just want to like one sort of final. I just want to like kind of drop a thing for we move on in particular. Like, I get it. Toxic positivity is a thing too. Like, I don't want to say like you can't complain. I don't think that's what any of us are saying. That like you can't be critical of this game. Naturally, just realize that it's just kind of funny that everyone started complaining at the same time, and that sort of dominated the conversation for the past few weeks. It's like, complain about it. You don't have to like everything in Endwalker, this game as a whole, but just think critically about it. Think honestly. 2 years ago, we were at the pinnacle of this game. Like the game was on fire. Everyone was excited about the amount of people that were coming in, the fact that the servers had to shut down because they were too popular. Yoshi P suffering from success meme, like I brought up a few times. Like that was just like a year and a half ago. Like, come on, guys. We can have a lull and stuff now that they're preparing not only an expansion, but the graphics update and new types of content as well. So just I don't know. Use a little bit of critical thinking there, and enjoy what you enjoy, and focus on that more so than anything else.
Amen.
And give us a rival wings roulette.
Yeah,
just,
for Denmo.
Do it for Denmo. Like it's his favorite thing in the game, and he only gets to play it when Rival Wings is relevant, and it's only relevant during the Moogle Tombstone events. It would be it's a cool PvP mode that more people should play, and they would just give us a damn roulette with some tombstones attached. More people would do them just like they do Frontline. And
speaking of content that needs a roulette.
I mean, it's getting there. The variant and Criterion dungeons possibly could as they keep going on. Like they've said, they're gonna keep making them in the new expansion, so they're not going away because I think they are having fun. They might be having more fun making them than people are having fun playing them. I think they're still fun to play. So we're going to take a musical break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what in the world are we talking about with variant and Criterion dungeons. So we're back, and we are talking about the variant and Criterion dungeons, which is a whole new different thing that they've introduced in the post Endwalker patches. Specifically, it was 6.25 in the Buried Memory set was the first one, and they are what a variant dungeon is a level 90 variable difficulty dungeon intended for 1 to 4 players. They are considered quote unquote normal content in that anyone should be able to play through and beat, but there is of course some skill, but not like the level of skill required for like an extreme or savage or whatnot.
Or variant dungeon. That vastly changes in Criterion and Criterion Savage.
But yeah, it's very specifically talking about variant dungeons. Mostly because, you can play 1 to 4 players, and the enemy strength will be adjusted depending on the number of players. There are no roll restrictions. They actually have some variant actions that you can choose and change up. So, like, for example, when I was going through last night, trying out Mount Roncon as a summoner, I had the variant Cure and I think the variant Rampart. So that way I could take less damage on occasion and heal myself.
Whereas I go in as a warrior and I don't use any of it.
Well, as a paladin, I still do use the DPS one, the one that hits a dot over time, just to do extra damage. Usually pop that alongside my Circleless Corn, so it does, double dot.
So, yeah. And you can technically, I think, even when you're not in combat, you can actually swap out what job you are to another job. So say if you decided, I'm going to do Bard for a bit. Nope. I'm doing this as Warrior. You can still swap into Warrior while you're doing a variant dungeon.
Are you sure? I thought I tried that once and it didn't work.
From what I understood, you could do it, but you will get a 30-second cooldown before you can use your actions.
Gotcha.
And again, it has to be while like combat's like not happening. So maybe.
So like in treasure maps.
Yes. Yeah, like in treasure maps. I think that's exactly how it works.
That's exactly how I learned I could do that, and also learned the hard way about the 30-second cooldown. Just this past week, I was like, oh, we have 2 tanks. I'll switch to something else. Wait, how come I can't shoot? This Mashida's gun won't shoot. Oh, wait, there's a cooldown. Oh, no. Luckily, nobody noticed.
Well, back in the day, when we were younger, when you changed to anything, when you weren't in a sanctuary, that's how it would work. Like, you would be in the overworld, just doing whatever, and you swapped your job and to do something else. And you'd be stuck with a cooldown because you weren't in a sanctuary. They eventually changed that. But that aspect still lives inside a treasure map dungeon or in a variant dungeon. You can queue in these things as solo. You can make a pre-made. You can do matchmaking. So there are multiple ways that you can enjoy the variant side of dungeons, either by yourself or with friends or with randos or a mix or whatever. The other neat thing about variant dungeons is that it's branching, where you can choose different paths and you can choose different things while you're on a path, and this will change your route. It will change aspects of boss encounters that you end up fighting, and there are actual multiple like storyline bits that you can unlock by taking these various paths and doing these various things.
And as of right now, we've only had 2 of these, and there's been 12 paths each. And so they're really fun. I usually I am not the best at just going and playing and figuring it out. I like having a guide, but I still find it fun.
And I know for several folks, the fun they found in doing variant dungeons is figuring out the differences, reading the various lore bits that you get by unlocking the various 12 entries for each one, and using what's in those entries to get them ideas of what to do different things when in the variant to unlock other entries. And so for them, the fun is not just playing the variant, but also puzzling out the other entries in the variant dungeons.
Okay, I think for the first one, I'd gone through and did all the obvious answers, and when I logged out last night, I just kind of skimmed a guide of sort of what some of the other things you would do, and some of the options seem pretty far out there. So maybe when I jump back in later this week, I'm going to read through the journal entries I've got to see if I can't glean some for myself.
Yeah, I know I know at least some, especially for example, I think some folks in the Blood God Discord. Some of them were like, oh yeah, I did this, and once, and I did this, and they're like, oh okay, yeah, they were, the figuring it out is part of the enjoyment they're deriving from doing variant stuff. And I think it's just really neat that this whole thing is that you also get some tombstones of like comedy and causality, at least as far as it goes right now. Who knows? Maybe in a year it'll just be poetics. But right now, it's giving the current tombstones that you would want to use to buy better, higher eye level gear for your characters to get them ready for the next expansion or to do the high-end content that currently exists. And this is a way that you could technically do it entirely by yourself if you wanted to. And I think that's neat.
And there's a lot of great like loot to be gotten from variant, especially. I know some people will even farm that and sell those items to make money. But yeah, it's really neat. And I like that, once you complete all 12 of the paths, you get a mount. Like usually there's 2 mounts tied to variant and Criterion. One is through Criterion, and you can complete it, I think, 25 times, and you can buy it unless it happens to drop. But for the people that don't do the harder versions, you just do all 12 of the puzzles and you get a mount. And usually I like that mount better than the Criterion mount.
And again, yeah, and you're right. There's also currently each set of variants has a different glam set, an outfit of the various pieces of like for example, they put the noir outfit. So if you want to look like a cool Spy Family guy, you'll get like the cool hat and the trench coat and the shoes and the pants and stuff you get the tokens from doing the Sully Subterrane. And then they have a cool like Far Eastern, Japanese outfit from doing Mount Roncon. There is also, I know, especially for Mount Roncon, there's also some like orchestrations, and there's also some emotes that you can get between the two.
There's at least 3 minions.
Yeah, so like there's
a parasol.
Yeah, there's stuff. You can get cool stuff from running these variant dungeons. And they're also, a lot of them is sellable, so a lot of folks will just sell them for it and it is currently, as of this recording, one of the cases where enough people are running it to be able to put stuff up on the market, but there's not so many people doing it, driving the prices like super low or anything. Now they're pretty high. So if you want to do it without spending lots and lots of gil, you should do it. It's a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say as the person sort of doing it casually myself, I think of if unless you're really going through and like going through with a fine tooth comb and trying to find every route and do everything, it can be a little repetitive, but it's also really just kind of casual. It's nice to just go on a little adventure with Nanamo and see what she says about growing up and her parents and whatnot. It's just fun little story content through that. So I think that because it's not as intense and the rewards aren't as crazy new like best in set gear like doing extremes would be, that you don't see a lot of people doing it. But I mean, hell, it's still fun to do, even in the lead up to like before the lead up to this podcast. Like if I got some time free, if I go to bed, why not jump in Sylvine for a little bit?
And even though it is quote unquote, you could do it casually, the boss fights are still boss fights. I'm still figuring some of the boss fights out, and I've ran each a couple of times.
Mm.
And also, the bosses will differ depending on how you progress through your route. And also, it could be the same boss, but they might have different attacks or different things happening based off decisions that you made in the middle of your route. So there is a decent amount of figuring out what mechanics you're actually dealing with when you're doing that, when you're fighting that boss, and still, figuring it out and also actioning the things that the boss is doing and making sure that you don't die. And especially for solo runs, if you goof, well, that's it, because there's no one to res you. You're just done. Time to restart and try it out again.
Yeah, that's the thing I've enjoyed about soloing is that even though just working through their HP bar takes a long time, you are responsible solely for your survival. You're responsible for learning the mechanics, learning where to dodge. That's why I like the strategy behind the variant actions. I go in with cure and with the whatever the dot is, because even as a paladin, I can heal myself, but cure works double time. So if I do screw up, I start having a bad run, I can sort of save myself that way. And sort of key up what you were saying about the variant, haha, boss mechanics. Like in Rokon, particularly, like the first boss is going to be the Shinobi, and like one of the first times I did it, it was raining and there were like mud spots, and she had a like a what do you call like a shadow clone jutsu from Naruto. But then like you take the other path and you're inside the temple, and there's like these little what do you call the dogs, the little Shiba Inus that show up, and the Shiba Inus are casting spells at the same time that she's doing her Naruto hand signs. It's just like the variety of those mechanics and the way they work together. If each run is different, and I find that really fascinating.
So yeah, no, it's really fun to try variant. Whether and it's been fun with people too. Like we were running it with some friends, and I think we were doing at the time there were 6 of us, so we ran as 2 sets of 3. And you were like, yeah, which should we do here? Oh, let's do this. Okay, let's do this. Oh, that happened. All right. And it was just fun, just rolling through some stuff with some friends, and things were happening. And it was just a neat way to experience it, as a group, and besides just running it solo. So I think it's a really fun time, and it may not be super ultra mega hard, but there's enough friction to be interesting and have fun with it. But if you want the friction, don't worry, they got you. There is the Criterion dungeons.
Now, I actually haven't done any of the Criterions. I assume both of you have.
I've done the Sildine Subterrane Criterion. I did not beat it. I've only gone in once, but the level of difficulty is way higher. I believe it's pretty much on the high extreme savage difficulty, because the trash can kill you. The trash can kill you. The mechanics for the bosses that I did with the Sylvian Subterrane, like they were hard. Like they were very much like savage level mechanics. But once you got them, they weren't too bad. And the savage version of it pretty much is you can't die. Well, in the Criterion, you get, I think everyone gets one raise. That's it. You get one raise. And so at that point, if you can't res anymore, you're just out of luck. And then with Savage, you can't die. And you have 27 minutes, I believe, to clear the entire dungeon with no deaths. And where Variant Dungeon has great rewards, Criterion does not. And that has been a very, very highly vocalized feedback and I believe that they are listening because they've mentioned some of the reward structure changes for Allo Island coming in 6.55 or 6.51. I think it's 6.51.
6.51 end of October.
So they're looking at maybe adding even like upgrade materials for gear. Something that makes it worth doing, because right now, a lot of people, they do it when it releases, but there's no reason to continue doing it. And I think they're fun. I wish, like I said, I wish the rewards were better and I would feel more inclined to really go after them. There's a mount I want, but I'll eventually do it.
So, just for folks to understand what we're talking about, this is not, earlier we were talking about Variant. Now we're talking about Criterion, and Criterion has two levels to it. There is Criterion, and then there's also Criterion Savage. They are both preset layouts. You can only do it with a set of 4 folks, 2 DPS healer tank. You have to have your traditional light parties. And you have to, I believe, beat the Criterion to then do the Criterion Savage version. So that's what we're talking about. Mostly, a lot of times, while you could technically do it via matchmaking, chances are you're going to set up a party finder and get people grouped up that way to do it as a pre-made group.
I think you can go in without a pre-made group.
No, I'm saying there is matchmaking, but most people only do it now as a pre-made. I don't know how long you'll be waiting for it to do matchmaking.
Probably as long as if you use Raid Finder to do Savage.
Probably. And and Criterion, the only option you have is Variant Raise 2, which other party members can revive with, but everyone only gets the action once, but apparently it can be replenished on completing an objective for the dungeon, or if there's just a complete party wipe. And then, again, once you do Criterion Savage, then you don't even get that. You've got to just do it, or you don't.
And one difference between Criterion and Savage is Criterion, if you have a party wipe, you just go back to the beginning and, keep going like you do a normal dungeon. Savage, you wipe, you're done.
So yeah, wow. It's rough. But that is what you're signing up for. It is. And supposedly, the way people talk about it is Criterion is tuned to be like a high-end extreme, and then Savage is, well, Savage. And I do understand the concept of you are doing a Savage, even if it's a 4-person Savage content, it's still Savage, it's still high-end stuff. There should be some form of drop to help you have better gear for that stuff. Like, I think you get those tokens that are unique to Savage and Criterion for dropping. You should be able to spend that on a Twine or a Shine or what have you to upgrade your Tombstone weapons and gear. Like, that would make absolute sense to me. That
and
makes total sense.
I will say, people, I have heard from someone that does do Savage, they equate it to even an Unreal, because it is 27 minutes of constant, fighting mechanics. You can't die. If someone dies, you're done. Like, you have to be on point. And so they equate it to sort of an Unreal mentality because you have to be that focused for that long.
You mean Ultimate?
Yes, Ultimate, my bad. I think I have Thor and Unreal on the brain because I don't want to do it. Yes, Ultimate. Because Ultimate fights are usually anywhere from 15 to 20 plus minutes. And it takes a lot. And that's what the Savage version is you have to beat it within 27, 28 minutes and be good.
Yeah. And for me, it's wild that this is wholly new thing. This is a new thing that they have just started doing with End of Endwalker. This is a new idea. And I'm going to go back to our previous pre-Variant Criterion conversation where I remember back in the day doing Eureka. And I feel in a lot of ways, Baja was Eureka 2.0. Where a lot of the ideas of how they set up the fates and notorious monsters and how you go through it, how you level up in it, how things work. I think they took, Eureka and went, okay, we think this is what works, this is what didn't work. And Baja really, really benefited from it. So I could totally see them taking these concepts of a lot of the stuff they've got works in this already. Like, Variant is super fun. Mm-hmm. It really feels like to me that what they need to really sort of iron out is how to really encourage people to do the Criterion side of things. Like, Variant dungeons, I feel, are in a way better spot currently than, say, Eureka was when it came out. People also don't remember that Eureka went through some changes itself. Like, there was the concept of the Eureka challenge log didn't exist yet when we started doing Eureka, and that suddenly became a much easier way of planning how to level up your character in Eureka by making use of a challenge log that did not exist when Eureka launched. So I feel that they kind of jumped into Variant as far as the design goes with a pretty darn good design that is a good foundation to build up from.
Yeah, absolutely. We look at Sildine and then you look at Mount Rokan, like there's so many just vast changes between the two, just the way that things are designed. And even if you look at like encounter design, like even just those two, the changes that we've seen between those two is vast enough that I'm sure when we get to Alo Alo Island tomorrow, that we're going to continue to see pretty big changes with that. So if we get, somewhere in the Dawn Trail patches, a revised version of these first two that match whatever changes they will have made to the design philosophies, yeah, and I think we got solid ground here. They just, of course, there are kinks and issues that they need to work out.
I mean, honestly, the only really big thing they need to do is figure out a good reward system and then just put it into criteria for all the Criterions that have come before, whenever they do it. And they can easily do that. They always adjust rewards for various dungeons and treasure maps and things like that. So I feel like that would be, once they figure out what needs to drop, then putting it in won't be a problem.
Also, I just so you know, Tobias, we're not getting Ala Ala Island tomorrow. That will be in the 0.51. That'll be at the end of the month.
Oh, okay.
After Campus.
So thankfully, by the time this episode gets released, hopefully, knock on wood, we're talking about before Ala Island has come out.
It won't be January, at least.
No, it'll be the end of this month.
I get my fairy with a gun sooner rather than later.
It's true.
Yeah.
You can go on a date with Matsuya and sell fish.
Oh, really? How did I miss that? Hell yeah.
Yeah, Matsuya is your dungeon date for that one.
Oh, Oh, wait. Oh, it's okay. For some reason, I thought we were going to the first.
That's
Uh,
story.
okay, okay. For some reason, I guess I thought that was Alola Island, which has confused me because sort of the Islander stuff we haven't really seen on the first Jets.
Right.
It was weird that we were combining the two, but anyway, um, yeah, no, I like I said, I like the idea the variant builds on here. Like as someone that hasn't touched Criterion and Criterion Savage, and probably won't for quite some time. I like that they're there. I like that they exist for the people that like that sort of challenge. But I still just think that this base idea that they've got is on solid ground. And unlike something like Eureka and Valja that takes a lot of time to level and to work your way through, you don't really got to grind too much to do that. Like you can run through a run of either and get the quote unquote experience in a nutshell, what in about 30 minutes or whatever, however long it takes you to beat the bosses, really. And I really enjoy that aspect.
I am honestly still kind of surprised that they didn't tie the relic stuff into these variant dungeons.
I could see that
Like,
happening in the future, though.
I could too. But I remember, when they were announcing what we were getting, when they announced the concept of variant / Criterion dungeons, when it was just like a line item in a live letter of these are things that we're going to maybe making in the future. And I was like, that's Relic right there. Where they're placing it, that makes total sense. That's going to be Relic stuff. And it wasn't. It's just this whole other separate thing. I will say it is different that you don't get any sort of combat stuff out of it. Because even, for example, deep dungeons, if you went through the full deep dungeon and you got enough of the stuff that powers up your weapon, you could technically turn that in to get a decent-ish weapon that you could use that's better than if you're just doing like just the basic, crafted, or even I think even a tombstone weapon before you upgrade it. Like it was a decent-ish weapon. I don't know if that's the case for the Orthos, but it was a way back in the day that you could get a weapon to at least make use of before you really get a really good weapon later on, grinding out harder combat stuff. And there was just nothing like that here. It is all just sort of optional glam stuff. It's cool glam stuff, and emotes and mounts and things that I want to do and obtain. But it was interesting that they chose not to include anything combat related, even though it is combat content.
It's funny you mentioned that because as soon as you started talking about the grind, I was thinking to myself independently, like, what are deceiver diamonds even for? And like, why didn't they just make deceiver diamonds the stuff you buy to get the ores for your weapons? Like that would have been that would have given the people a reason to pick, to pick the Nanimo path or to pick the Hancock path, because you get more of those chests that honestly, in my experience, those extra chests just end up being deceiver diamonds half the time, and they're useless. Like, why didn't you turn that into the relic currency? And that would have had people going in and in and in, over and over again, even with new people, if that was what you banked to buy the ores. Which, when I think about it, since they were so experimental and they didn't know if they were going to take off, I wonder if maybe that's the real reason they didn't. Because they didn't know how Sildine was going to really resonate. So you didn't want to have your whole relic thing tied to something that you might drop, you know?
Well, it's funny because that's what the whole Eureka Baja exploratory zones were. The whole concept was that this is where you can do relic stuff in. Now, there were still other things you could do besides Eureka and Baja, and still get a lot of your relic work done through other grinding formats. My guess is that with the variant dungeons, because they're so quick, that if they were trying to make that something that you would grind out for relics, that they don't last long enough.
Yeah.
Like it's not where you can do one in like, you know, potentially like as quick as like 10 or 15 minutes. You know,
Right. When you
if
have
if
everything.
that, like you could, yeah, especially if you have a group of four, like I could see people like, you know, who are on top of their game could burn through it real fast. It's kind of like people doing like the first round of Pandemonium. People were just burning through that boss so quickly in Alliance runs, Alliance normals to get Moogle tombstones. Like I think that was the big people just set on that and just killed that one boss so much just to get to watch the Moogle tomes go up.
Poor Ecthonius.
Uh, so yeah, I could see them going. Variants are cool, but they don't take all that long to do. And so if people try to like grind this out like a lot, that would be. I can see that not being such a good idea. But it does feel weird that this whole new thing just was not. That's right. That was not connected to actual combat stuff at all. But what you do get are just really neat, you know, especially if you're a lore nerd. They're both are just great little zones, like you know the Sildine subterrane. It is a whole area that has always existed underneath Ul'dah. That before this variant dungeon stuff, you got to go through once when you were doing stuff and the storyline leading between ARR heading into Heavensward, where everything was popping off at once, and you ran through this area in a cutscene, and then we knew it existed, but we never saw it again. But now you get to explore it freely with Nanamo hanging out with you. And as you do that and you unlock all the 12 entries, you can learn more about it. You get to learn more about Nanamo and like her deal. And that right there was like awesome. Just having a chance to go hang out with Nanamo in this little cool variant dungeon by itself was really, really neat. And Mount Rockon, which is the current new one. I'm about to get Owl Island, but right now it's Mount Rockon. And you got to hang out with Hancock. And for me, that was a wait, I have to deal with Hancock? Really?
Well, to be honest,
Him?
I would have
But-
said the same thing if we hadn't. I really liked him towards the, during anytime we saw him at Endwalker. Also, during the Tataru quests, you get to interact with him for part of it, and he really grew on me then. So getting to do this with him was actually more fun than I think it would have been if I hadn't done the Tataru quest before then.
Yeah, I can't remember if he ever gets voiced in Stormblood. I don't think so.
Yes.
Okay, well, my headcanon, no matter what, my headcanon has overridden him being voiced by John Oliver, which I think kind of sets the tone. Like, you're supposed to dislike him because of his association, but really he's a hapless like dork. he's a British twit, really, like almost immediately. So he's kind of someone he's a comic relief kind of character. So that's why I didn't really mind him going into this, knowing that he was just going to be a comic relief.
I really don't like the organization that he himself is attached
right.
to. And so that probably didn't help. But then also we've gotten to meet and know Mipa or Melissa Sternenberg. She's a 12 loving,
He's a Hancock stan.
Hancock stand. Yeah. Like I did, and I'm like, wait, that's someone that's a thing that someone could be. And sure enough, she is. And you know what? More power to her. I'm glad that she gets to go on dates with Hancock, because fellow Carbuncle Chronicler, Umi, if he got one of these with Graha, we would never see him again.
Why do you think I don't run Catesis Hyperborea with anything but duty support? Except once, and that was not my fault. I was forced into that. But there's a reason I run that dungeon with duty support only.
But yeah. So and for me, the whole thing with Namo, I guess, was really awesome because, as I have said before in life, I didn't know what I was actually signing up for when playing 14, and when I started looking at, I knew that you could play whatever job you wanted, and I'm like, well, I want to be a summoner. Okay, well, Thaumaturge is over here. That's a magic caster. I guess that leads into summoner. No, that led to black mage. I didn't realize that when I clicked buttons, because they don't really tell you where it was going at the time. And so I picked Thaumaturge, so my home state started as Ul'dah, and in the starting, your starting initial storyline, you end up meeting Nanamo. And so one of the first NPCs I got to meet and interact with was Nanamo. And so the idea of being able to, after so long, to go back and actually get to do a dungeon with one of the first NPCs I ever met in the game, period, was really, really neat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I like having these characters show up and get to participate rather than just be in cutscenes. I do wish that they let them do stuff in the battle, though, even if they didn't program them like trust. You know how, like, in some dungeons, how there's like some enemies will show up and some of the enemies in the background will show up and like your NPC allies will go quote unquote fight the enemies, that their battle just happens to end when yours does, for set dressing.
Yeah, but look at who we're running with.
Yeah, it kind of annoys me after I run this for the 10th time that Hancock hides behind whatever every time we see a demon. I'm like, come on, man. You've done this like several times with me. Pick up a sword. Let's go.
Throw Gil at it.
Oh, man. Can you imagine Nanamo being a trust and you level up Nanamo? Oh, my Lord.
We would never see you again.
Yeah, that would be so great.
Maybe one day, maybe it's in a later, variant, they could do that. It took them, speaking of things that they have iterated on and improved on, in a lot of way, trusts and / duty support is just the stuff they started working on with squadrons.
And I hate squadrons. Oh, did I hate squadrons? But now I really enjoy. I always run a new dungeon with the duty support. But no, I hated squadrons. Oh, they're awful. They've done very well since then.
Like, yeah, they really have, and I agree. And like the one time where I'm like, well, maybe I don't want to do duty support for this, as actually the upcoming dungeon in the Lunar Subterrane, because I kind of want to be like, hey, stop. Look at this thing. This thing is a thing from FF4, and it's cool. There's this elf. It's a dark elf. When you did this battle in 4, you couldn't actually use your weapons because everything was magnetized. So also expect magnets when we deal with that boss. All right, before we've had to have yammered on enough for a podcast. So I would like to get y'all's final thoughts about variant, and mostly variant, since we haven't really done Criterion. I guess Anna could give us thoughts on both. But some final thoughts on variant.
So I think it's a great idea, a great experiment. And there is room for iteration. Like I said, we already see how Rokon's improved on Syldian, and I'm sure we'll see Alo improve on the formula going forward. I guess the last thing I want to add is that I was complaining before FanFest about how we're never going to see more Eorzea, how we're going to keep going to new areas, and we're never going to get new zones in Eorzea or Authored or whatnot because we're past. But like, this gives us an option to explore these zones in greater detail. We talk about the history with Syldi. We briefly get that one Hildebrand quest way back in the beginning where we talk about the zombie curse and stuff like that. Like, this gives us a chance to really dig into that without needing to devote space for a whole new zone or new quest in Ul'dah and Mount Rokan. I'm just glad that we got to go to Hingashi for real, because like we did Kugane, but we hadn't seen any of not Japan at all. It was all in Fantasy China. So the fact that we can explore a little bit of Japan, it makes my weeb heart grow 3 sizes being able to do that. And man, Crimson Rise, hearing like a variation of the Kugane theme, I love it so much. It's so great. So if we never get new zones in Eorzea and Authored and other sort of areas that we skimmed over, if they keep giving us these type of little optional contents in those places to flesh these places out, I think I'll be happy.
Yeah, like I think it kind of ties into what I am thinking on these. I feel like I would put these in the same category as Deep Dungeon. Deep Dungeon, we get various lore things. The newest one, Eureka Orthros, we get more story about Crystal Tower and the Noah, the whole thing behind all that. And I think I get the same feeling doing Variant Dungeon as I do with Deep Dungeon, in that I like doing it solo. I like going in on my warrior and just surviving and killing all the things and doing it on my own. And I like doing Deep Dungeon on my own. And even though it's a lot more difficult to finish, but I feel like getting a group to go with you into like Criterion and getting a group to go into like Deep Dungeon, I feel like it has the same flavor in a way. And again, like you said, it explores areas without giving us a whole new zone. It explores different areas of places that we know and gives us more lore and story behind it. And yeah, I think they're great. I really do enjoy them, and I'm glad that the team, 1, likes it, and 2, can seemingly pump them out pretty quickly. And I feel like it's giving us a lot. It's a fun way for them to try out mechanics before putting them in like bigger things.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of your sentiments, like 100%.
You mentioned new mechanics. I was doing Silding last night, and where you do the Amalja Priest, I think, where he does the line AoEs, but he uses them on teleport lines. So like have to see what the teleports are, and you can also get teleported if you stand in there. Something I learned the hard way. But yes, I love seeing new mechanic schemes like that.
I know in Mount Rockon, there's a couple of mechanics in Savage that I know I felt like why watch Mr. Happy do it. I know he was convinced Top was going to have those mechanics and it didn't. So now it's just waiting to find out where it's going to show up again, because it was difficult, but it was fun. It's one of those mechanics that once you get it, it looks so cool.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I fully expect to see some of these pop up in Savage or Extremes or even Ultimates.
Yeah. Well, I also really enjoy, and this is not just Variant or Criteria or anything, they have done a very good job, I think, especially in Walker, taking stuff that they did in Savage fights and taking them and recontextualizing them for like dungeons or
treasure dungeons.
Yeah. Different things of like things, even in treasure maps and variants and just the normal dungeons and whatnot. They've taken stuff that was like, super hardcore mechanics and then refigured out ways to make them not quite so hardcore, but recognizable if you've done them. Like, oh, I know what this is. But that also then will prepare you for, say, whenever next year, when we get Dawn Trail. And suddenly we're all level 100, and maybe we want to go try some level 90 savages just to try them. Or even, level 80 savage stuff, now that we've got a nice big buffer that if everything won't just one-shot us if we goof it up. There's still a little bit of friction, but not a lot of friction. But you'll be able to see, oh, wait, I remember seeing that in the dungeon. Okay, this is just a slightly more complicated version of that. All right, cool. I've now seen it before, so it's easier to wrap my head around. So it works like both ways. If you did the hard stuff initially, you see the easier versions, you already know what to do, or you did the easier versions, so now you have like something to stand on and understand when you then tackle the harder versions of it. And I love how they've been figuring out ways of figuring out how to, how content is now talking to each other, as it were. And
Absolutely.
I'm just really glad that they're willing to take risks. Like, this game's been going on for now 10 years. It's getting yet another expansion, and they're not done. They're still trying to think of new, cool ways to do stuff and iterate on it and make things better. And they're not done. That we are about to have as many expansions for 14 as they got, period, in FF11. And it's just nice to know that even though this game has ran as long and has gotten just as much theoretical content expansion-wise as the previous MMO, they're not just like throwing it out to pasture, and maybe in a few years we'll see like, a Final Fantasy 18 or something. No, they're like 14 is still going strong. They're still trying new stuff. They're still investing the time and the effort to make it like the coolest MMO around. And God's bless them, and I hope that they can continue to do so.
Absolutely.
And one thing is, like, like we said, this is not a perfect game. The devs learn by listening to us. And if you have an issue with the game, go to the forums and politely and nicely express what you do not enjoy. Express what you think might be a good solution. They do read it. They do look at that, and they try to make you can't make everyone happy, but they do their best to do what's best for the game and what's best for the players. And they've not really ever let us down in that aspect. So yeah, if you have something that you don't like about it that you think would be a good change, go to the forums, let them know. Don't be mean about it. Just be civil, and who knows, maybe in a future live letter there's going to be some quality of life change that you helped, get out there.
Now, when you say the official forums, you mean Reddit, right?
No, the Lodestone. The Lodestone forums. Not that they don't see stuff on Reddit, but the Lodestone forum.
I thought the official forum is X.com. They renamed it to X recently, right?
Oh, gosh. No, don't even go there at all.
No. Look, what I'm going to say, though, if you got to complain about it, if you just got to rant about it, if you got to get on your own podcast, you're like, oh, this game is dead. Oh, this game is such crap. You know what? Cool. You know what? Tell them what you could say on your podcast. You know what? Basil said I'm allowed to do that. Basil from the Carbuncle Chronicle that you can find at carbunclechronicle.com said that I could complain about it. So I'm going to do it. Thank you, Basil, at the carbunclechronicle.com. Yes, does that mean I'm just chilling to say I want you on your podcast to mention any of my podcast? Abso-frickin-lutely. That's right, because that's what you're listening to right now. The Carbuncle the Carbuncle Chronicle, your podcast for everything awesome in Final Fantasy XIV. Thank you to both Anna and Tobias for yammering along with me about things. This episode is also edited by Anna, which is because she's awesome, great, and amazing, and I love her. And the theme song for the Awesome Cast was done by DJ Inabito. You can find his stuff at djunio.com. He's also great, and I love him, but not as much as I love Anna, who also took his song and recontextualized it and Final Fantasy'd up all nice and pretty for this show. You can find our website, again, at carbunclechronicle.com, or on the AwesomeCast website, because technically that's what it leads to, at awesomecast.com. From there, you can find all sorts of things, like, for example, our YouTube channels, where we have YouTube channels for the AwesomeCast and Carbuncle Chronicle, and usually a few days we remember that, oh, right, we should put these episodes up on YouTube. They get up on YouTube. And you should totally like and ring bells and subscribe and all the YouTube things. We also do have a Patreon. So if you really do like our stuff and want to throw us some money to say, hey, you keep on doing this stuff, here's some monetary support to help you get you there, be super appreciated. We also do, while I don't have a Carbuncle Chronicle branded Discord, we do have the Awesome Cast Discord, and it's got a Final Fantasy 14 thread in there, so it's pretty much the same place, as far as I'm concerned. You can check that out as well. Again, the links are all on the website. And finally, leave us, not finally, but finally for the Awesome Cast Chronicle specific stuff, leave us reviews on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify, what have you. I mentioned Apple Podcasts specifically because it's the only place where you actually can leave, like, not just like throw some stars out, give us 5 of them, but you can actually say what you like about the show or how much you dislike the show, whatever. I don't care. As long as you put the 5 stars, you can say whatever you want in the Apple Podcast review section. Anyways, you can also find this podcast on various social media platforms like Twitter, I guess, but we're also on the Blue Skies now. You can find the Carbuncle Chronicle on Blue Sky, carbunclechronicle.com. Mine is at itsbasiltime.com. And I believe Anna's is the Angel Darkfire, but the middle A is missing, .bluesky.com or whatever, or .social, whatever that is. And Tobias is rtobias at the Blue Sky stuff. That for people who don't have their own unique domain names as their name. That. Did I get both of y'all's right?
That is
I think
correct.
so.
You can search for it, I'm sure. You should be able to find it.
Oh yeah. Also, while the Carbuncle Chronicle does not have a dedicated Twitch, I do at its basal time. Anna also has one whenever she uses it at Angel Darkfire with the middle A is missing. And Tobias, what is your Twitch channel now?
Rev Tobias, REVTOBIAZ. Just search for me there. You should be able to find me pretty easily.
So yeah, I think that is all the things. And did I miss anything?
I'll say if you want more podcast about Final Fantasy 14, but maybe also One Piece, I've got sort of the main podcast I come from here, Third Impact Anime. We've got a sub show out where I read through the One Piece manga at the same time that our compatriot Bill is playing through FF14. The idea is that we've taken our mutual loves for these things and we've decided to quit complaining to the other about why they're not engaging in it and to actually challenge ourselves to do the thing. So I know there's a lot of anime lovers here, a lot of manga lovers here. We've kind of really been on a One Piece kick lately. I've been sort of catching up to where Bill's progress is. We did our episode on Skypiea is released, and by the time this comes out, we should also have an episode on the live action series, I want to say, and possibly even the first part of Water 7.
Yes, I meant to have you shill for Grand Line Born and Third Impact at the start of this show, and I forgot because I didn't write it down. And I didn't write it down again in the final things portion, but I fixed that for the future to make sure that you can talk about those things because that is important. Those Third Impact Anime is a great anime podcast, and a Grand Line Reborn's a really good One Piece and 14 podcast.
Yeah, I mentioned that. I neglected to say that the show, but yeah, Grand Line Reborn, and that is at thirdimpactanime.com. And the art for our show, it looks really spiffy. It may be familiar to those of you who listen to the Carbuncle Chronicle.
I have no idea why. It's not like I did the logo and cover art for both or anything. Anyways, so until next time, never ever forget, you tank the Bone Dragon up north.